Okay, this is now the 5-minute tarot for the 8th of March 2017. And today's card is the Justice card. And I'm doing this today not because I shuffled and picked a card at random, but because I was talking to my daughter yesterday. And she happens to be a lawyer. And we were talking about what she's doing and a friend of hers and could he or should he start his own law firm and so on. And my daughter mentioned about how she's more conservative now and she doesn't like to take risks as much now compared to what she was like in her 20s. And this is maybe normal, that the older we get, the less likely we are to take risks. But she said that because she thinks it's partly because she's a lawyer, but also because the legal profession is really risk averse. Right, it's not all about, but a lot of the law is where you're given a situation and you figure out what are the risks involved in pursuing a particular course of action, and once you've figured out once you've assessed the risk factor, then you figure out what do you do so that you can not suffer as a result of risk if something goes wrong. So she was talking about that, and I thought this relates in some way to the Justice card. And maybe sometimes when you turn the Justice card, you can look and think, oh no, it's a major trump, and what does it mean? And you can sometimes draw a blank on it. But maybe if you think about the Justice card as being risk assessment on the one hand, and also risk mitigation, which is the word she used, on the other. So if the Justice card comes up, we're meant to assess what are the risks involved in doing something or in not doing something. You know, you can do something about a situation, or you can do nothing. And doing nothing is also, in its own way, doing something, because you're maybe hoping it will go away, or keeping your fingers crossed that it's going to turn out well, and instead of actually doing something. So maybe what we do with the Justice card is we figure out what are the risks involved in the question and or the answer. And it can mean as well with the Justice card, you don't know it with some cards, maybe it takes you like 10 seconds to figure out what to do or how to go about doing it. But somehow with Justice, because you're having to assess risk, somehow you need to take a little bit of time and not jump to conclusions with the Justice card. But even if the reader instinctively knows what the answer is, you can't just tell them the answer and move on from there. With Justice as part of the answer, maybe what we do is we have an answer, but we make sure that that's the right answer and that we haven't forgotten something, or we haven't ignored something, or we haven't thought this is not that important, when in fact, if we examine it, we'll discover that it actually is. So with Justice, think about risk assessment. Again, it's maybe easier to talk if we know what the question is, but generally speaking, risk assessment. So you look at and see, which means that you maybe got to break down the question into a number of different parts and examine each individual component on its own and see, okay, is this important? How much? Or is it not? Can we safely ignore it? Or do we need to have a little bit of protection against this particular influence? So it's somehow the Justice card has to pay attention to details and has to break things down into small pieces and examine each individual piece and see its strengths and its weaknesses. And all of this takes time. And that could be another point to make to the questioner. If the Justice card comes up in the future, you can tell them, you may know the answer tomorrow, but it's going to take you a month to be sure that that's the right answer. It's going to take time and you should be patient and slow is the way to handle it, rather than jump to conclusions or want a quick answer. You're better off probably with the Justice card to be patient, and instead of a quick answer, you want a slow answer. And the other thing that my daughter mentioned was risk mitigation, which means that probably nothing is ever perfect, but maybe the future involves 3 possibilities, and if that one of them is particularly threatening, so if you can only do one thing and you've got 3 problems facing you, figure out which one is going to be the most difficult or is going to have the worst outcome, and maybe put your energy into solving it or making it less forceful or less difficult, or taking away its power, right? Because if something or somebody has the power to hurt you, what do? You maybe protect yourself, or maybe you take away their power. So maybe you get 3 people who can hurt you, but so you choose the one who's going to do the most damage potentially, and maybe that's what you work on. And again, that means going back and looking at assessing the risk. Who of these people can hurt you most, and what damage can there be, and how much cleanup time will it require if you let them do what they want to do, and to what extent should you figure out how to handle the problem before it begins. There's something about some Chinese philosopher or general made the point about the way to win a battle is to not even start the battle in the first place. So you do what you can, or you do what's required, so that there's no need to actually fight, and that way you never lose. I think I kind of butchered that quote, and I'll see if I can find it and maybe mention it tomorrow, but it says a couple of points about risk and the Justice card and how to deal with it. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.